Good afternoon, and thank you all so much for coming, especially given that I'm 2 hours and 40 minutes late. I today saw something that I never thought I would see and live to tell about. I went from going with the traffic on 85 South to going against the traffic on 85 North. And there in my windshield was an 18-wheeler. And I actually plowed over the cable in the middle of the median. And I thought, this is it. This is where it comes to an end. Lord, forgive me a sinner. And I swerved, and this 18-wheeler swerved, and I guess we missed each other by about an inch. So I was destined to be here. And thank you all very much for coming. I'll give you a little background that led up to this book. I went to Auburn University, and I was an officer in the Marines for 4 years. One of my Marine buddies and his wife have driven up from Enterprise, Alabama, to join us. And I got out of the Marine Corps, and I went to work in the advertising business. And the advertising business is a strange world, but I was on the creative side of the agency, so I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun, and what I did was I wrote and produced and directed TV commercials and radio spots, and wrote brochures and went on photo shoots, and it was very groovy. As I got more experienced, I was working for my father, who owned the agency, and as I got more experienced, he was sort of herding me over into lots of client interaction. I play okay with others, but I wouldn't get like 4 stars in the plays well with others category. I sort of prefer to work alone, and so you end up working with clients very closely, and you'll spend 7 hours writing a brochure, agonizing over it, making sure that every word is just right, and you go to this guy who is perhaps a car dealer, and he's got his red pen out as he's reading the brochure the first time. It's like, maybe you could at least skim it before you start changing the words. Eventually, my father passed away, and I was running the agency, and I found myself daydreaming about dropping out. And I went online, and I took one of those professional personality profiles to tell you what you should do as a profession. And so I filled it out, and what do you like, what do you hate? And the only 2 jobs that it could come up for that would be appropriate for me were sniper and beer taster. And they weren't hiring in those areas that I could find. I thought about trying to apply with Blackwater, but I think they make you exercise and stuff, and I put that in my past. So I talked with my wife about it, and what should I do, and we said some prayers, and I finally realized that it was either take a hostage or quit. And so I was very fortunate and found a buyer for the agency, and was able to move on into unemployment. That was sort of where our thinking fell apart, because the plan was that we were going to simplify. We were going to be like that dude on Kung Fu, and we just weren't going to spend so much money. And if you stop spending so much money, you can live on very little money. The problem arose that you can walk away from the white-collar life, and you can walk away from your white-collar salary, but the white-collar bills are not going to walk away from you. And so, as the checkbook was just, bleeding money like a government program, and I made the list of all the bills. I said, okay, Heidi, if we just ate ramen and drank water, what would it cost? And with all the insurances and the taxes and the high-speed internet and on and on and on, I realized that with my wife's salary and me doing nothing, we were going in reverse. So I thought, well, I'll go deliver pizzas. I've heard about pizza delivery, and those guys make good money. At the end of the night, it's just cash, and you just come home. And of course, I send in a third to the government, but it's cash. And so I went and I went in to apply for a job as a pizza guy, and it turns out that you don't apply for a job as a pizza guy. You sign up for a job as a pizza guy. There's no interview process. I walked in, and the guy said, yeah, all right, well, the training is next Thursday at the Waterfield store, so go to that and come back, and I'll give you a shirt. And I thought, all right, I'm going to be rolling in some cash. Well, it took me about 3 shifts to understand that the entire corporate pizza world is built on the fact that the drivers can't do math. Because what they do is they give you cash at the end of the night. You got your tips, and then you go buy gas so you can come back the next night to deliver pizza, so you can get cash to buy gas to deliver pizza, and it's this circular thing where that's all you're really doing. Yes, they're handing you cash, but you're using it to fuel up your car so you can come back and feed the masses. As that revelation occurred to me, I was thinking back on a number of things, Heidi and my plan to simplify, and how simple life was in college. You had to pay for food and beer, and I thought that was, that I could re-achieve that life. And I was thinking, I worked crummy jobs in college. Certainly, there's some way to do this. And the more I thought about it, the more interesting it was to me. The idea of taking sort of a matured, white-collar, proactive brain and go and reinsert it in these jobs that all of us worked as kids. And there are lots of people that have gotten lousy breaks in life, and they're working these jobs because they have to. As a white collar employee, what you're paid for is proactive thinking. You come into a situation, and if it's screwed up, you fix it. And you're always looking around. How can we be more efficient? How can I be a better leader? What can I do to motivate my people? And I thought, what will it feel like to go and be in these jobs? So I called up my agent. I have a mean agent who hates me up in New York, and I had him from a previous manuscript, and that he had felt confident was going to sell, and I was very excited, but it didn't sell. But we kept in touch over the years. So I called him up, and I said, hey, I've got this idea for a book. It's called You Want Fries With That, and the subtitle is A White-Collar Burnout Experiences Life at Minimum Wage. And he said, oh, man, I love it. How far along are you? I'm like, well, this phone call. And he said, well, call me when it's done. And I said, but Keith, you've read my stuff. You like the style I write in. Maybe you could find a publisher who's interested, and that way, I'd have a commitment going into this. And he's like, oh yeah, like a presidential autobiography, huh? I'm like, yeah, like that. He's like, yeah, send me the pages, click. So I had to decide, am I going to do it or am I not going to do it? Talk with my wife. She thought it was a good idea. She knew that I had been, typing for years and years trying to get published, and she thought it was funny, and she has a great sense of humor, and she was already laughing about my pizza adventures. So she said, have at. So, there are a number of sort of stereotypical minimum wage jobs out there that I assumed that I would work, and circumstances sort of led me, doors opened, and I walked through them. After being a pizza guy, my wife put us on the Atkins diet. And I don't know how many people have done that, but there are only so many mornings you can get up and eat a fist-sized hunk of cheese and a pound of bacon before you're thinking to yourself, I could do for a little sugar in my diet. So I had the idea, well, I'll go be an ice cream scooper. That's going to provide me with ample sugar. So I was an ice cream scooper, and then I worked construction. Then I worked as an orderly in training at the emergency room. Then I worked as a cashier at one of the national fast food chains. Then I did a stint as a cowboy on one of those city slicker wagon trains out in Wyoming, and that was a lot of fun. I didn't have any idea what I was doing, but as my friend Brian can attest to, one thing that you learn in the Marine Corps is how to stand around and look like you know what's going on, especially as a lieutenant. You're clueless, but your Marines need to look over there and think, the lieutenant knows what's going on. So, you get the hands on the hip thing, and you squint, and you spit a lot. And so that was what I did on the wagon train. And I had a couple of wranglers who were assigned to me. So, I'd get up in the morning and I'd be having my job, and I'd say, hey, Jake, I got to go over there and chat up the guests. How about you go saddle up Elvis for me? And, oh, yeah, sure, boss man, whatever. I'm like, great. And then once I got on the horse, of course, not knowing how to ride a horse, I just stayed on it all day because I didn't want to get on and get off. It might give me away. So there's a chapter in the book about each of those jobs, and there's also a chapter that I'm very proud of, which was my failure to get hired by Walmart and Home Depot. That is correct. You're looking at a guy who did his best and failed to get hired by Walmart. I thought when you go into Walmart, you just walk in and they check your pulse and here's your how may I help you vest, and off you go to help people. But that's not the case, and actually y'all can all experience it for yourself. When you go into Walmart, there is no HR department there. It's a computer, and I'm here to tell you when the nuclear holocaust occurs, it'll be it'll be cockroaches and this computer. And so you fill in your information, and it says you've got a test that you got to take. And I'm thinking it's just going to be ethics for felons. It is okay to steal from the store, true or false. And I figured I can handle that. But it got into this really deep, sort of bizarre personality profile, and very nuanced questions. And I'm thinking to myself, what answer do you want to hear? How did the guy over there with the bone through his nose get hired? Okay, whatever he did, that's what I want to do. So you finish the test and you hit send, and it in no uncertain terms says, well, we'll be in touch if we want you to come to work for us. And so that was a real quiet 3 days waiting for the phone to ring, and they never called, nor did Home Depot. So that was pretty humbling experience. I think, at least what I tell myself about that experience, is that I applied for part-time work, and I think what they want in terms of low-paying jobs, working at one of the big boxes is desirable because there are benefits and there's a certain degree of security. So I think what they want you to do is there's a box that you can check that says, I'm available all shifts, all days, and I didn't check that box. And I think they want you to check that box to make sure you're willing to properly worship the Walton family, and then they work you maybe graveyard shifts to see if you've got the stuff to be interacting with the public. I'm often asked what was the best job and what was the worst job. The worst job, without a doubt, was working in the emergency room, because we've all seen the TV show Cops. Well, the emergency room is where those folks come when they're feeling too poorly to commit a crime. And not only do you get to interact with them on a very close, oftentimes unclothed basis, but you also get all of the aromas that they bring with them. And the orderly is the guy who cleans up the mess after the doctor has done all the fixing and sewing and that sort of thing. I was there as an orderly in training for 6 shifts, and then that would determine whether I was going to stay on. Well, at the end of the 6th shift, I went screaming out the door. So, no question that the ER was the worst job. The best job, sort of a toss-up, being a pizza guy is pretty cool. You're out driving around, listening to talk radio. The drawback is, if you need money, then that's not a good job for you to work. You would think that the ice cream scooper job, that would be pretty sweet, but all I can say is you have to read the book to understand how that job gets under your skin and eventually breaks you, sort of in much like a Chinese water torture method. Construction was probably the best job because you actually made money, and it was under the table. And there was, because you work in construction, you actually have some time to stand around and goof off. And these big corporations, their profit is largely based on their ability to control the hours that you work. And it is a machine. So when you walk in the door, you're working, and you're working until you walk out the door. And having spent my life in the white-collar world, you work for a bit, and then you go down the hall and you say hi to somebody, and you tell jokes, and you find out what's going on, and then you go back to work. And in the pizza world, you walk in the door, they know that the first phone call for a pizza is going to come in at 5:55, and it takes 10 minutes for that pizza to go from phone call to coming out, cut, boxed, and it's going to hit the rack for delivery at 6:05. So that is what time the first driver clocks in, is 6:05. Not 6 o'clock, because that would be 5 minutes of standing around, smoking and joking. So you clock in at 6:05, and you deliver pizzas until the moment when you walk back in the door, and you look over across the room, and there's not a pizza there, and in the amount of time it takes to register in your head there's not a pizza there, you hear the boss calling from the back, "Hey, Prioleau, let's get you clocked out." And so, in a job like that, and a job at Burger King, I never got to meet my coworkers. Working at Burger King, no one ever told me the break policy, so I never even had a break. I just stood there behind the cash register the whole time that I worked. I think it's really common. Let me back up. One of the questions the question that's probably most often asked is, well, what is the message? What's the point of the book? Why did you do it? I sort of think of myself as an observer and a thinker. But if you're looking for answers, you need to go to somebody much smarter than me. The purpose of the book is to sort of give the people in America that read books a look back at that life, and to make you laugh. I will say that I was very careful never to make fun of my coworkers. All of the humor is about sort of the insanity of the different jobs and the rules of the corporations and the publications that they send down, the training publications. I mean, that's just comedy waiting for someone to dictate it. But the message of the book is for, there's no great message. It's for you to have some fun reading a book. Hopefully it'll make you laugh out loud. If it doesn't, I'll buy it back, I promise. You can send me an email. And then beneath that, obviously you can't write a book without inserting your observations and some of your views of the world. So clearly there's some of that. In terms of my life and how it changed me, I got a real close look once again at the people who are working these jobs, and they're either working them because they're kids or they're working them because they don't have any choice. And what I decided was that no matter how bad the service is, that I now say thank you for whatever. You go into a Zippy Mart and you just want to get your slushie and your bag of nuts and go, and the cashier's got the attitude and not making eye contact, and it's irritating. So what I do is I say thank you when they ring it up, and they look at me like I've got two heads because I said thank you, and I say you have a great day. And that might be the only nice thing that person hears in their entire 10-hour shift. I tip the pizza guy a $5. If you want half a chance at getting into heaven, that's a requirement. The pizza guy gets a $5 bill. I was leaving Burger King the other day and had just finished my Whopper. I didn't supersize it, but I did want fries with it. And on the way out, I went up to the cashier and I said, "Thank you very much. That was delicious." And she looked at me like I was a four-headed alien because I don't think she'd ever heard the word thank you, and I'm certain she'd never heard the word delicious during her working hours. It was a fun book to write. It was a miserable book to research. I'm hoping that it sells enough copies to where the publisher says, "Well, wow, that was great. What's your next book?" As opposed to it selling lots and lots of copies, and they say, "Oh, we need a sequel." There are some jobs out there that I would like to work. I would like to crack the code and work at the Walmart or one of the lumber stores. I would like to work at a 7-Eleven. I would like to be a golf caddy. Perhaps a courier of some sort. I'm sure that there are lots of fun, interesting, funny tales out there for that kind of thing. But right now, I'm just doing what the publicist tells me to do, and I'm focusing on going around. And thank you to all of you for being here 2 hours and 40 minutes late. I had a collision on Interstate I-85, and thought that I would bring this in as proof because Frank was kind enough to invite me here, and I didn't want him to think it was just like some cop-out where I slept in and didn't make it. So I would be happy to take any questions that anyone has.
Are you working on anything?
I am. I have a book that's in the can, more or less. It's the original manuscript that got me my agent, which is a humorous history of the United States. And I went back and did a fairly extensive rewrite. I wrote it about 5 years ago, and during the last 5 years, I've learned some new tricks of the trade, and so I think it's a greatly improved manuscript. So I'm hopeful for that. But that's in the can, and the book that I'm actually writing, and I wrote a section of it sitting on the side of I-85 waiting for the tow truck, is a book about what is it like to write a book and then try and go through this process of getting published. The thing that sort of inspired that was I read about this staggering number of manuscripts. There are several million manuscripts submitted to agents and publishers every year, and only a tiny, tiny fraction of them get published. And that used to be me, and now I'm sort of in the club. And I thought, well, all those poor writers out there, they don't know what's going on. They're just getting these crummy rejection slips. What is it like? What happened that got me my break? What is the book tour like? What is the overall experience is like? Do you make any money? I don't know yet. I don't know how many books I've sold. I don't know anything. So it's an interesting topic, and I've given it to several friends that are not writers, don't have any desire to publish a book, and said, is this up to snuff? Does this make you laugh? And do you find it interesting? And I've gotten good reviews so far, so we'll see. We'll see.
If anybody else has questions, if you would repeat the question, because they're not mine.
Yes, I'm sorry.
No, that's not. That was clear what that question was. Do you need to get a definite yes from your agent? Yes, it's sold before you, during this process, have the thought, oh my God, what if I'm doing this and this isn't going to sell?
The question was what, as I wrote this book, did I have any commitment whatsoever? And the answer is no. And there were lots of times when I was writing it, and I would stop and I would say, my God, Prioleau, what are you doing? You're out there wearing a Burger King visor, running the cash register at a Burger King, and no one has agreed that they'll publish whatever it is that you write. So there were several during the writing process panic attacks, and I just pressed forward. I believed in the idea because I think that it has really broad appeal. I think everybody looks back and they either remember a crummy job or they wonder what's with the attitude of the person selling me my hamburger, or it just felt like it would be something that would be a fun, expansive topic. And it did. Ever since Harry Potter, the publishing industry has become enamored of books that provide sequels, because everybody's looking for the sequel. And so this book, unfortunately, does have a sequel built into it. But that's a good question, and I think for every time that I asked, my God, Prioleau, what are you doing? My wife's also asked, Prioleau, my God, what are you doing? Yes, sir.
Did you do any of these jobs in Charleston where you were known?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And that was one of my rules to myself, was that if I ran into anybody that I knew, I couldn't tell them that I was doing this as research for a book. I had to just be that person. And yes. And I heard that I heard a very close friend of my dad's said to another friend of his, "Have you seen Prioleau Alexander lately? He's got hair down to here, and he's delivering pizzas. What happened to that boy?" The most tenuous job was being the cashier at the fast food place, because I was right there in Mount Pleasant, 5 miles from my home, and anybody could have walked in at any time. I did not encounter anyone that I knew there. I did deliver a pizza to a friend of mine who's sort of a high-powered corporate attorney, and he opened the door, and there we were. And one of the things that I relearned working these jobs is the ability to just stand there and say nothing and do nothing. So I was just standing there with my pizza, and he said, "Prioleau." I said, "How you doing, man?" He said, "Good. How's it going?" I said, "It's awesome." And the funniest part was I gave him the pizza, and his wife had written the check, and she stiffed me for a $2 tip. So, but that was my wife pleaded with me. Charleston is like Atlanta. It's made up of lots of little different mixed cities. And she was like, Prioleau, you got to get a job for the Burger King up in Monk's Corner or in North Charleston. And I'll tell you, I was very surprised. I did go up there and apply. At one point, for the fast food place, I had 12 applications at 12 different restaurants. 3 of those had help wanted signs out front. But that means the manager's got to actually, go through the applications and call you and hire you. So I finally went into one and I said, y'all have a help wanted sign out front. I applied for work 7 days ago. What is wrong with me? Why can't I have a job? And she looked at me and said, okay, well, you're hired. But I went to a Hardee's, which I ultimately did not work in, and asked for an application. And the girl up front said, well, we're out of applications. And so I did the stand there thing, and she stood there, and we stood there and looked at each other. And finally, I broke her with my look and my silence. And she said, we have some applications in Spanish. So we sort of stood there and looked at each other, and she broke me, and I said, well, I speak a little Spanish. Why don't you give me one of those? So she hands me the application. Swear on my mother's grave, as I was walking away, she said, now, when you fill it out, put your answers in English. As if I was going to, translate the name of my road. I live on Broad Path Road, El Rodo del Wido. But it was quite a trip. Yes, ma'am.
What was the reaction amongst your previous colleagues at the agency, the ad agency?
They thought I was sort of crazy to leave the business anyway. And my wife and I did mission work for an outfit called Alpha USA for about a year. So they all thought I'd lost my mind anyway. And Heidi and I live out in the country. So, unless it was in my sort of like inner circle of friends, most people didn't know what I was doing. The process took from idea to end of the manuscript probably a year. And the only uncomfortable part was when I'd run into somebody at a party and they'd say, well, what are you doing? I'd say, well, I'm working at Burger King. And so that led to some interesting discussions, no doubt. Yes, ma'am.
I'm just sort of curious, you were in this very creative environment, and obviously what you decided to do for you was very creative, but when you were working as a cashier at Burger King, did you miss the intellectual component of your former job, and did you miss socializing with people? I know you had your wife.
Right.
But
right.
I'm just kind of wondering, what kind of kept you going on that front?
But that's a great question. The question was, what did I do to keep my mind from falling into mush when I was working as a cashier and wasn't getting professional interaction? I was writing the book as I went. So every shift I'd come home and there would be some new chunk of hilarity that had transpired. I would have found new publications, that came down from corporate, or a new note from the owner. There's a note in the book, you'll see there's a note from the owner to the cashier that says, don't let anyone in your drawers. And, probably good general advice. Working as the cashier at Burger King, one of the things that I had to keep in mind, and is one of the reasons that I never made fun of the people I worked with, was because I was working these jobs because I wanted to learn about it. But there are a lot of people that are working these jobs because they have to. And so when I left my shift at Burger King, I wasn't going to work another shift at the Zippy Mart, which a lot of these people are doing to make ends meet. So I would, I'd go back to my normal life, albeit a life with no money. I've come to the conclusion that money and air conditioning are not truly missed until you don't have them anymore. And Heidi and I have learned a great deal about simplifying our lives, but it still costs a lot of money just to breathe air here in the land of the free. Yes, sir.
You said you didn't get the commitment early on. But when did you start to give them enough information? When did they start to come back and say, yes, we're going to publish? That sounds like a process.
Yes, it is. It is very much a process. My agent, I did it all, except for I sent the manuscript in to him, and when everything was done, all the chapters, and he read it. He called me up. He said, "Prioleau, it's great. I love it, but you're missing one chapter." And I said, no, dude, it's done. This is it. This is the book. And he said, "What's the name that you've proposed for the book?" I said, "Do you want fries with that?" He said, "Seems to be a chapter in here missing about asking the question, do you want fries with that?" And the long and short of it is I was trying to figure out a way not to go work at the fast food restaurant. But ultimately I did. It was, your agent, you're really lucky, really blessed when you get an agent, period. And he ain't got time. He ain't interested in coaching me and patting me on the back and, "Gee, Prioleau, you've written 2 chapters, way to go, it's so funny, love it, that kind of thing." He wanted it when it was done. And I sent it in 1 chapter short, and he called me on it. So it was back out to the burger world. His editing part was, he called me back and he said, "Prioleau, you got to get rid of all these passive verbs." And I'm like, "Okay, what's a passive verb?" And he says, "Well, Google it, figure it out, and fix it." So, so that was really hard work. A, figuring out what a passive verb was, and then B, going through my whole book and changing passive verbs into active verbs. So I sent it back to him, and he calls me up and he says, "You use the word I too many times. I did this, I did that, I did this." I'm like, "Well, dude, the book is about me doing this and me doing that and me doing this. How do I get rid of the word I?" And he says, "Google it, figure it out, fix it." So then I had to figure out, how you work around using the word I, and it actually works in with passive verbs. So that was a fairly painful process. Was getting it where he wanted it for submission, and then once it was submitted, the first place he submitted it was Arcade, and Arcade bought it. And the editing process with them was quite simple. I think they changed 6 or 7 words in the whole manuscript. So I was very flattered by that they trusted me, because writing to be funny is a lot about the timing, and you're sort of trying to be inside the reader's mind and time it so that the punchline comes. And I guess they thought I'd gotten it right, so they were very kind to me.
And to follow up, the agent knows that this publisher is likely to take a book in this area more than other publishers.
The question was, did my agent know that this publisher would be apt to buy this? He is fond of Arcade. They're a mid-sized publisher. They do about 40 books a year. And the thing he wanted me to do was, in publishing my first book, was to actually learn something as I went through the process. And at a big agency, a big place like HarperCollins or Penguin, a first-time author really isn't going to get much attention. So Arcade, Keith felt like was just the right size. Bunch of professionals there. Obviously, I've learned a lot from them. And I don't know whether it would have sold HarperCollins or Penguin or one of the big boys, because Arcade was the first people to see it, and they bought it. Yes, sir.
What are the chances that it will be reviewed favorably by ORourke?
That's a wonderful question. The question was, what are the chances of it being reviewed favorably by Oprah? Every publisher sends every book they publish to Oprah. Oprah probably gets 20,000 books a year. So, no doubt they put them on a pallet and ship them somewhere. But it's, it's sort of like buying the Powerball lottery ticket. You just buy the ticket just because, maybe. So they sent the book in to Oprah, and a producer from Oprah did call back. And I think that it was sort of a first step to make sure that this wasn't too much like A Million Little Pieces, which shattered into A Million Little Pieces unfortunately. And they wanted to know if there were pictures of me working these jobs. And yes, there were pictures of me. So I sent them to Arcade, and Arcade sent them into Oprah. And that's been, I guess, 2.5, 3 months. It's sort of like, you buy the Powerball lottery ticket, and the first number comes up. I'm like, ooh, I got the first number. Well, of course, you got to get 6 more in a row to get the millions. But I've got my one little number there, so I'll wait patiently to see if the next number comes up.
What is the book tour like?
The book tour has been a lot of fun. The question was, what is the book tour like? The thing that's interesting is the book tour is primarily so that a first-time author can meet Frank, who owns the bookstore, and meet the people who work for Frank, and so they can meet me, and hopefully if I'm not a jerk, they can say, well, that guy was kind of a nice guy. And when someone comes in, independent bookstores are very different from the big boys, because there's a group of people that regularly come to hear it a cappella. I mean, yes, that's correct. And they come in, they say, what's new, what's good? And if I can meet Frank and his staff and have them think I'm a good guy, if they haven't read the book, they might be more apt to read it. And if they read it and I did my job and it's good, then they can say, well, it's a good book. You ought to pick this up. I did have one funny story. I won't tell you where this took place, but it took place in the Southeast. And I went and spoke, and it was my very first event, and I was very excited. I showed up, and there were 22 people in the seats, and they seemed a little older, but that's fine. Older people read books and think they're funny too. So I gave my thing, and I talked, and everybody laughed. Everybody had a good time. There were some good questions, and I'm having a hard time answering the questions, doing all the math in my head about all these sales that are going to be coming up. And I wrapped it up by saying, well, thank you so much for coming. I'll be up front to sign books. I'm here to tell you, the bulls in Pamplona do not stampede the way those people stampeded to get out the door so that they would be gone by the time I made it to the book signing desk. And so I went up and I sat and for a few minutes, and I went over to the store owner and I was like, I guess maybe I need some pointers, I guess that didn't go so well. She said, oh no, it went fine, everybody had fun. We have a retirement community right down the block, so they'll come up here, sometimes kill an hour, and it was, I guess, a good day for people to come listen to the writer. So, all in all, except for that book signing, and except for staring an 18-wheeler in the face on I-85, so far I've had a great time. And I've had friends in the different cities. And I've got several longtime buddies here today. So that's been a lot of fun.
I'm the same TV. Do you know that? C-SPAN?
I've heard about that, yes.
Well, I was curious about that because it's nonfiction books, book authors for 48 hours a week, and it's something I can take me fond of, and I wonder that process from your point of view, how you get on with like the Oprah question.
The question is about book C-SPAN. My wife and I live out in the sticks, and they don't even run cable out there, so I just have regular old rabbit ear TV. But I have heard of that, and as a matter of fact, I ended up hiring a gal who is a radio show specialist, and she books me on to radio shows, which has been very successful and a lot of fun. And she brought up C-SPAN book TV and said she was going to look in to see if there's anybody in Charleston that can do it, and if not, she wanted me to come up to her outfit in Alexandria. Her company is named Advocacy Inc., and her name is Audrey, so I'm giving her a plug because they're awesome. They're awesome.
I want to ask one maybe last question. You talked about the method as you're writing to be funny, which I think anybody who thinks about it probably hears that's one of the hardest things to do is to write to be funny. Do you have specific models, or do you read how-to books, or what strategies do you use when you're trying to be funny?
The question is how did I learn the style needed to write humor? And it's a very simple answer. I stole it from P.J. O'Rourke. I don't know how many people have read him. I think he is the greatest writer alive today. And as a matter of fact, one of the guys that I put in the dedication of the book, a guy named John Tyson. John Tyson knows P.J. O'Rourke and was in Winston Groom's wedding, he and P.J. And so in the book, I wrote to P.J., and I guess it's going to make its way there sometime in the near future. I decided 14 years ago that you couldn't write books fast enough to keep me happy. Whatever he wrote, I was going to buy. So I thought, well, nobody in the world writes like P.J. O'Rourke. I wonder if I read his books 100 times if I'll learn that timing. And so I'm a poor student of his because I think he invented the genre that I'm currently working in. But it's strange because at an event like this, oftentimes people will ask you for a reading, but the written word and the spoken word are very different. And it's very hard for me to read a passage that's funny because in my reading it, I screw up the timing of it, whereas you sitting, reading in bed before you go to bed at night might laugh out loud at it. But if I read it here at this podium, it just doesn't translate. I think that's one of the reasons that P.J. O'Rourke has never been pulled over into the television world in a big way, because his talent is in writing, not doing that improv zingers sort of thing. Thank you guys so much for coming. Like I said, this was this is appreciated more than I can say. As I was sitting there on the side of the road, thinking, way to go, Prioleau. You've done great. You crashed your car on the way to your signing in the biggest city in the Southeast. So that was good. But many thanks to Frank for being understanding, and many thanks to all of y'all for coming. And I hope.